What's up, guys? It's your boy, Benny. Earlier this week, we had the honor of having Jim Jordan on our program. Asked him a wide-ranging set of questions, everything from should Fauci be criminally prosecuted to were there FBI informants inside the January 6th riot? Wow. The answers absolutely ripped apart the internet. Ladies and gentlemen, Jim Jordan. Ladies and gentlemen, joining us now, a man who needs no introduction, Jim Jordan. And sir, thank you so much for being on the program. Also, good luck to the Ohio State Buckeyes for the NCAA Wrestling Championships in 1 week.
Thank you. Yeah, they're going to need it. It's going to be tough to beat Penn State or Iowa this year, but hopefully they'll do well. Well,
you know, I'm a Hawkeye, and a lot of love from the Midwest, a lot of love to the state of Ohio. We spent a lot of time there in East Palestine, actually, this year, and so certainly lots of love.
By the way, Benny, I was just out in Iowa City. I was doing an event for a colleague, and so I said, if I'm going to go to Iowa in February, I'm taking a match. So I watched the Iowa-Oklahoma State dual meet on.
Oh, that was a good one.
Yeah, it was good, and Iowa put it on, but there were some tight matches, so it was a lot of fun, and it was typical Iowa wrestling. 15,000 sold out Carver Hawkeye Arena. And so it was a lot of fun. And they had some bunch of alumni back who were, my generation, that old generation of wrestlers. So it was good to see some of those folks too.
Did you get a lot of love from the Hawkeye State?
Yeah, it's good. I mean, Gable and his wife Kathy, they're Republicans. They're good folks. So we've had a friendship with them here. But particularly when Gable got the Medal of Freedom and President Trump presented it to him, we were there at the White House with him and his family. So it was kind of fun to see them. And then John Smith, of course, the legendary coach, Oklahoma State. So we had a good time.
Speaking of sold out crowds and packing them in, Tucker Carlson was packing them in for his January 6th expose this week. I think a lingering question that we would have about this investigation is the government lawyers, the lawyers for the DOJ and the federal government and the DC prosecutors withholding evidence. Do you believe that those lawyers should be disbarred if they actually withheld evidence and violated the Brady rule?
Yeah, if you didn't give over, turn over evidence, I mean, you can't do that. So certainly that is a problem. And I'll tell you what else we've learned from whistleblowers, FBI agents who've come talk to our committee staff, and 3 of them have been willing to sit for a transcribed interview. Just the pressure, the intense pressure to go after anyone associated with January 6th. We had this one whistleblower testify, Benny, where he said there was a busload of people who came down from the Boston area. He worked in the Boston field office, this FBI agent. And he said they sent him a picture and video of the 2 people who organized these 2 busloads of folks who came down. And I guess they were inside the Capitol. And so they said, we want you to open up an investigation on these 2 people. And they said, okay, they're inside the Capitol. We'll begin an investigation. Then they said, the other 138, we want you to open up an investigation on them too. And our whistleblower said, why? Do you have any evidence that they were inside the Capitol? They did something wrong. He said, no, we just want you to do it. He says, no, we're not going to do that. But he said that was just one of the many examples of how intense the government went after folks who were in and around the Capitol on that particular day.
Yes, you've had colleagues ask about this, and we would be interested to see if you have any whistleblower evidence of confidential human informants for the FBI in the crowd or in the Capitol on the date of January 6th.
Yeah, it sure seems like that's probably what happened, based on the way FBI Director Wray has responded, or frankly not responded to that question. He's been asked now a couple times by some of my colleagues in committee hearings. We haven't had Mr. Wray in front of the Judiciary Committee in a while. I'm sure that's going to happen at some point. So it's been interesting how he's answered that question. It sure seems like that was going on, and based on, again, some of the things we have seen from what Tucker's been playing as well. I think that's a question we'll find out here at some point.
Yeah, I know this would be unprecedented, but in Tucker's second night of bombshell revelations, he talked to Capitol security officers, police officers. The police chief, Stephen Sund, has come out and saying Pelosi was the one who made the Capitol so breachable and so vulnerable that day, put obviously people's lives in danger, and people lost their lives, like Ashley Babbitt, unarmed female veteran MAGA supporter who was killed and murdered without warning. And so I suppose my question would be, what could you do to ask Nancy Pelosi questions about that day? I know it'd be rather unprecedented to bring a member of Congress in to ask questions, but it seems as though her responsibility was the security of the Capitol, and she failed horrendously.
And I think, and Mr. Sun pointed this out, but I thought this from the get-go, because if you remember, Mr. Banks and I, my colleague and I, we were named to be on the committee by by then leader, but now Speaker McCarthy. And there was an initial story in one of the publications here on the Hill that said, oh, the Democrats are fine with the people that Leader McCarthy had selected for that committee. And then Mr. Banks and I started talking about how we felt that we'd seen that communication where Mr. Sund had talked about the optics of not having the National Guard and the presence here, and the fact that we didn't have the proper security posture that day for a rally of this size. And as we start talking about, then and only then did the Speaker Pelosi say, oh, you guys aren't going to be allowed to be on the committee. Because I think it all boiled down to that simple fact. In the summer of 2020, we saw what happened around the country. We saw the Democrats' response. They were for defunding the police. They called it peaceful protests when it was rioters and looters. And so then to turn around and have the kind of presence you need for a rally this size, they didn't like the optics of that. And that was clear. Mr. Sund pointed that out. And I think that's why there was the lack of National Guard and others here that day.
Yeah. I mean, it does seem as though the person to be questioned here would be Nancy Pelosi. Also, perhaps the police officers who escorted Jacob Chansley around the Capitol. This is coming off as some of the most alarming footage that this man had, Chewbacca Man, as he's belovedly known, serving 3 years in prison, being escorted around by Capitol police officers. Do you have any idea what's happening in this footage and why this would be occurring? Seems like a setup.
I don't know. And I think it's good that Tucker has this and we're seeing the full picture. I mean, transparency is good. It's supposed to be a government of the people, by the people, for the people. So be transparent with we the people on all issues. It seems like where there always seems like something they're telling us that isn't accurate on COVID, on everything else. So just be transparent with we the people. So we're Americans. We can handle the truth. And in these pictures, it does seem like, they're just walking around and so many of the people at the end of the Capitol were doing that. Now, I don't know if this was to de-escalate, as some I think have claimed, maybe. But again, the pictures are pretty telling. People who did something wrong that day, of course, hold them accountable. But there seem to be so many folks who are getting contacted by the FBI, some in cases that they never even came in the Capitol itself, but still being contacted by the FBI and checked out. I think a lot of Americans find that pretty concerning.
Yeah. Are you in favor of all this footage being released to the public, as Speaker McCarthy noted?
Heck yeah. I totally support the speaker. Like I said, it's supposed to be a government of the people, by the people, for the people. So for goodness sake, be square with we the people. And they haven't been on so many things. And that is what really bugs me. When you got some unelected person saying no, you got Fauci telling us things that are not true. That nothing makes me more mad, because it's supposed to be the people that get elected make the decisions. And this is a case where the elected official, in fact, the highest elected person in the Congress, the Speaker of the House, said, let's make this available. So God bless Speaker McCarthy for doing it.
Good, good. Well, God bless you with the Weaponization Committee that you chair for bringing in Twitter and the Twitter files and the Twitter censors and exposing the censorship industrial complex. I know that was a bombshell hearing yesterday. Did you ever think that you'd see members of Congress, Democrats, ask journalists for their sources, claim that people are so-called journalists that are standing before them, demean and eviscerate and behave in such a vile manner? Debbie Wasserman Schultz comes to mind, along with Plaskett. Yeah. I just could not believe the behavior of Democrats yesterday in your hearing.
Yeah, so-called journalists, award-winning journalists is what they were. New York Times best-selling authors is what they were. But I actually think this is one of those scary moments in American history where you had members of the United States Congress having journalists as witnesses who are under oath and asking those people to reveal their sources. That is such an affront, such a violation of the First Amendment to demand that and ask those kind of questions and to continue to pester these witnesses to give their sources. You can't do that in America. It is called freedom of the press in the First Amendment. With the other four rights we have, the right to practice your faith, the right to assemble, the right to petition your government to redress your grievances, and freedom of speech. So you have 5 rights. One of them specifically mentioned is freedom of the press. And you had Democrat members of Congress saying, tell us your sources. That is scary. And these guys, to their credit, this is one of those moments where I think if we can get this fixed, where we stop this attack by agencies on the very people they're supposed to serve, we will look back at these 2 journalists who were willing to step forward and tell the truth. And remember, the day before they come and testify, they learn that not only do we have on the day of the hearing, Democrats ask them who their sources were. The day before, the FTC, they find out the FTC is writing letters to Twitter saying, who are the journalists you're talking to? 4 journalists are named personally. 2 of them were the ones we had testifying yesterday, Mr. Taibbi and Mr. Schellenberger. So God bless them for having the courage to stand firm in the hearing and, frankly, to come to the hearing after they knew the FTC, Biden's FTC, was going after them.
Yeah, doesn't it seem like an actual attack on journalism when they're going after Tucker for doing real journalism? All Tucker's doing is exposing a different perspective and the optics, and he's essentially deconstructing a narrative and showing a very complicated situation and various dimensions of it. And that's called journalism. And he's exposing new information to the public. I've never thought I'd see a world where journalists would scream that you'd be releasing all of the tapes. They're so upset that you're going to release all the January 6th tapes. Why?
Yeah. And what a contrast to, Woodburn and Bernstein. Clay Travis made this point. What a contrast to them who got leaked material and were able to present it and kept their source confidential, as you're supposed to do. But you made a great point, Benny. Think about this. In basically a 24-hour period, you have Chuck Schumer writing to Fox News saying, don't play the tapes. Don't let America see. You have Democrat members of Congress saying to a witness, who are your sources? And you have the Biden administration FTC writing to a private company saying, who are the journalists you are talking to? All that happens. We learn about all that, at least, in a 24-hour time span. That is what the left is now about. And this is why we have this committee, because if that's not the weaponization of government, I do not know what is.
Where are our journalists? Where's Jim Acosta?
Yeah.
They're all frauds. They're all frauds. Where are they screaming to high heavens? Where's the White House Correspondent Association?
Yeah.
Where's the Capitol Hill Reporting Correspondent Association? These people should be losing their minds if they have any intellectual honesty and consistency, and they're not. They're allowing it to happen. They're cheerleading it.
No, that's even worse. You're right. Not only are they not talking about it, they seem in so many ways to support it. Now, I did talk to a couple mainstream journalists yesterday as I was walking the hallway, and I do think deep down they're like, wait a minute, this is even though they're probably on the left, like so many in the mainstream media, I think deep down they kind of understand. And I actually made this point on the House floor about a year ago. And we were talking about the cancel culture mob coming after everyone. And I was on the House floor, and I looked at my Democrat colleagues and I said, don't think they won't come after you. Right now, it's conservatives and Republicans. I said, but the mob never stops. The quest for power and influence and limiting speech never stops. And I said, they'll be coming after you. And guess what? It was about that same time where in California, in San Francisco, they said, we are no longer going to have the Dianne Feinstein Elementary School because somebody found something Dianne Feinstein said like 30, 40 years ago. Oh, that doesn't fit with today's wokeness. And they said, we're going to take her name. Dianne Feinstein, liberal icon, Democrat senator. They took her name off the school. That is how the mob just keeps moving. And so if we don't stand up now, and frankly, people on the left should do it, like our witnesses yesterday, Mr. Schellenberger, Mr. Taibbi, they're Democrats. But God bless them, they believe in the First Amendment.
Yes, that's right. Along with Russell Brand and along with Joe Rogan and along with Elon Musk, who I think we're all Obama voters or Bernie supporters and are now finding themselves inside of our movement because it's a movement of freedom and it's a movement that doesn't want government weaponization. And you're in charge of this committee. You've just requested a much larger budget for this committee and seem to be ramping up. What is the end goal for the weaponization committee? What do you hope to accomplish?
Great question. We first is get the facts on the table, make sure the country knows fully what has been going on in their government that they pay for many times with their tax money being sent out to these not-for-profits and others who are also influencing and trying to limit speech. So get all the facts on the table, then propose legislation that will fix that situation. And I think this is an important and look at the appropriations process, which is, all the spending and taxing bills, the way the founders set this great country up, the greatest nation ever. They set it up so that the spending and taxing starts in the Congress, in the legislative branch, and specifically within the House of Representatives. So use the appropriations process, the power of the purse, to also make sure that these agencies aren't being turned against the very people that they're supposed to serve.
Do you, in overall philosophy of government, agree with Donald Trump's plan essentially to break up the federal government in Washington, D.C., perhaps relocate or liquidate entire agencies and be rid of the sort of barnacle bureaucratic class entirely. This is, of course, something that is terrifying the left. They've written quite a bit about it. And this is apparently going to be an executive order on day one were Donald Trump to win in 2024. Would you be in favor of it? Yeah.
Well, I'm certainly in favor of Donald Trump winning. I'm for President Trump. I think he's the best president we've had, certainly in my lifetime, who did more of what he said he was going to do than any president I've ever seen. So we want him to win. But yeah, you have to have that attitude, because here's the problem in this town. So many people who never put their name on a ballot think they run the place. Yes. And that's not how our constitutional system works.
Yes.
You're supposed to go out, put your name on a ballot, go talk to the people in your respective district or your respective state, or in the case of president, of course, the whole country. Go talk to the people, we the people. And if they elect you, those are the individuals who are supposed to make the decisions. And frankly, they're supposed to do what they said they were going to do when they ran for the job and the people put them in that office. And President Trump did that. So I'm tired of the Faucis who never put his name on a ballot running the stinking country. It doesn't work that way. And we've seen almost everything that guy said and did turned out to be a misleading, not accurate bunch of, the things he told us just were not true. So that is something that is critically important. And President Trump is 100% right in trying to make sure the power returns to the people who put their name on a ballot and get elected to office.
Yeah, Dr. Fauci yesterday said that he would be thrilled to come before your committee and answer questions. Will you have him?
At some point, I think he will be back in front of Congress. I assume it's going to happen in the Select Committee on the Coronavirus, which I also happen to get to be a part of. That is run by Congressman Winstrup. We had our first hearing there earlier this week, where Dr. Redfield really laid things out, I think, in a pretty compelling way, how Fauci from the get-go was trying to downplay and make sure no one bought into the lab leak concept, the lab leak theory, and was pushing that this thing came, as I've said before, from a bat to a pangolin to a hippopotamus to Joe Rogan, and then coronavirus goes everywhere. So when we all know that it was, and the reason he was so focused on that, Benny, is because Fauci knew right from the start that he had sent our tax dollars to a lab in China that wasn't up to code, that was doing gain of function research. And the virus starts in that same city where that lab's at. And he's like, oh, sugar, I got to do something. I got to keep that from getting out. And he knew it had to come from a lab, because the first email he gets on January 31st, 2020, 10:32 p.m. from Dr. Christian Anderson says what? Virus looks engineered, virus inconsistent with evolutionary theory. That is a fancy way of saying it came from that lab. And he goes into overdrive to cover his backside, and a bunch of things happen over the next few days. And that same doctor who said that on January 31st, on February 3rd, says, you're a nut job if you think it came from a lab. Switches 180 degrees. And I think the only thing happened is Dr. Fauci got to him and said, hey, dude, we got to get our story straight, because I can't have this stuff getting out. We can't have this stuff getting out. And then Christian Anderson and another doctor who said the same thing, they get a $9 million grant 3 months later.
So specifically before your committee and also before Rand Paul over in the Senate, Dr. Fauci has, of course, absolved himself of all funding of gain of function. He said he doesn't know anything about it. It is verifiable and demonstrable that he lied. Now, there are codes in Congress. I have a code right here, 18 U.S. Code 1001. False statements to Congress. Says you can be imprisoned. Says you can be imprisoned for 8 years. If you lie to Congress. It seems like there has never been a more clear-cut case of some individual lying to Congress.
Yeah, we can do it. Yeah, there could be a referral, but you would refer it to the Biden Justice Department. I don't know that they're gonna pursue that. But you could definitely do that. You could have one of the committees, the Senate Judiciary Committee, could do a referral. I doubt if they will with the Democrats in charge. We could do a referral potentially. I would frankly prefer to just have Dr. Fauci come back in and take another round of questions here. But we're building the case, like we had Dr. Redfield testify last week. Chairman Winstrup did. I thought he was great, as were the other witnesses that were brought in. So again, laying that foundation. I do think Dr. Fauci and the CDC changed the definition of gain of function research so that Fauci has like this wiggle room. But they were juicing up this virus, no doubt about it. Juicing up this virus, making it more I don't know the technical, but making it juiced up and more deadly, I guess, and maybe the correct word. So they were doing that in this lab, and I think that's clear. So we'll just have to see as we move through this investigation.
Mm-hmm. Hunter Biden, there has been, speaking of people who belong in the hot seat, there's been an enormous amount of evidence that has, of course, been like a waterfall from the laptop. The 22-point email has been particularly egregious given Joe Biden's classified document scandal. And that is continuing to this day. 9 more boxes found in his lawyer's office in Boston, right? That were taken, shuffled out of the Penn Biden Center. Do you believe that Hunter Biden had access to classified information, that he used it to profit for the Biden family?
I don't know that Mr. Comer and the Oversight Committee, Chairman Comer, is going to pursue this issue. Our focus in judiciary is to the degree and influence that the FBI may have had on how this story broke back in 2020. And we got into this yesterday in our hearing in the Select Committee. But the FBI for a year. And this is Yoel Roth, the head of trust and safety at Twitter, under his sworn declaration. He says, for a year, I had meetings with ODNI, FBI, DHS. We had these weekly meetings, sometimes even more often as it got closer to the election. They were telling me that to be on the lookout for a hack and leak operation, that it would happen in October of 2020 and it would involve Hunter Biden. And I'm like, I mean, the FBI, and then it happens, the FBI. So the FBI had predicted the time, the type of operation, the method, and the person. I'm like, how did they do that? How did the FBI know that there's going to be a hack and leak in October of 2020 involving Hunter Biden? And I think they knew because they had the laptop. So they were telling him something, even though they had the laptop that they knew was authentic. So our involvement, I think, is the involvement of the Justice Department in furthering this narrative that they had the laptop. So they furthered this narrative that it's a hack and leak, and they knew that the laptop wasn't. So that's where we're going to, I think, focus on our committee.
So you're going to be bringing in Christopher Wray? You're going to be asking them about this? Because this does seem to be the largest political rigging of an election I've ever seen, because you have a piece of exculpatory evidence against a prominent family member that's running for president that has crimes on it. If you're looking at the Marco Polo report, hundreds and hundreds of verifiable federal crimes on this single laptop. And they did everything they could, not only to hide it from the American people, but to call it fake when they knew it was real. Yeah.
Not only to hide it from the American people, but to it seems prime and prep the American people that if in fact it came out, it wasn't true. I mean, that's the most frightening part. And it's like, you had it for a year. You had it in December of 2019. So for the next 10 months, you're doing this prime and prep operation that I think, as you said, Benny, obviously had an impact on the election.
Yeah. What legislation will we see? In sort of conclusion here, what legislation can we see? Because the hearings are great and the sound bites are great and we love them and we'll play them on the show and we love tweeting them out. But the flame throwing is great. How do we prevent this from happening in the future?
Yeah, I think you got to use the appropriation process primarily, and then legislatively. I mean, maybe there's certain bills that need to happen. Like one just, I think, little example is when the FBI is doing interviews. I mean, maybe that interview should be an audio tape of that interview. I mean, if you had an audio tape, I don't know that they could press charges against Michael Flynn like they did in the whole Trump-Russia investigation. Maybe you look at why do people keep their security clearance after they leave government? My bet is those 51 who signed that now famous letter that said, all the earmarks of a Russian information operation, the Hunter Biden story. Maybe they shouldn't keep their security clearance. Maybe there's a good reason for it. Maybe there isn't. That's something I think we should look into. So a host of things I think we need to examine.
Final question, your message to Elon Musk. You've now held multiple hearings about Twitter. What is your message to Elon?
God bless him. God bless Elon Musk for standing up for the First Amendment and recognizing how important that is to the greatest country ever, protecting those freedoms. I mean, I think that what a service he's done for the country.
Yeah, truly. I mean, truly, I think possibly the greatest act of public service in my lifetime is opening up free speech once more. And now you've seen the repercussion effects across social media. It's changed. It's changed everything. We do this every single day. This is our career, and we've seen the mob that was at the gate, the orcs at the gate, like retreat because of Twitter. It's been wild. So yes, a national treasure. As are you, sir. Thank you so much, Congressman, for being on our program. Jim
Thanks
Jordan.
for your great work. Take care.
Thank you for watching. Our channel is here to meme the libs until they cry and then to meme them crying. Their tears, they taste just like sweet, delicious ice cream. Salty, too. We ridicule the establishment and the libs because of you. Your support keeps us going. So if you like what you saw, please punch the subscribe button, click like, and ring the little bell so that you know when we're live. Don't you want to know when we're live? And make sure that you subscribe to our email list just in case the plug gets pulled, as tends to happen. If you want to see more of our videos, click here or here. My name is Benny Johnson. Stay free, Base Patriots.